Welcome back to Ireland AM. Now, just a content warning, some of this might be very upsetting for viewers. In 1992, Esther McCann and her 18-month-old daughter, Jessica, they were killed by Esther's husband, Frank.
Frank McCann is currently serving a second life sentence, but is soon to be up for parole again. So joining us to discuss this is journalist Nicola Bardon and Esther's sister, Marian Leonard. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know this can't be easy for you. Nicola, can we start with you? Because it's the brand new podcast, Nobody Heard Them Cry, and this explores this harrowing murder. Can you take us back and fill us in on the details?
Yeah, of course. So, as you mentioned, Esther and Frank were married. They were in the process of adopting their daughter, Jessica. She was 18 months old at the time when she passed away. Frank was hiding a secret that Esther had no idea about. She thought that they were happy, their new family was coming together, but it turned out he was after impregnating a young teenage swimming student. And this is all about to emerge. The adoption board had said no to his bid to formally adopt Jessica. And for whatever reason, Frank, instead of coming clean to his wife or taking accountability or, facing it, he decided his way out was to take the lives of the two people that were closest to him, and in such a horrible way. And it wasn't just one time. He tried this several times, which is one of the most harrowing things about it as well, because if it didn't work the first time, he didn't think, OK, well, now I just have to own up to it. He cut the brakes in her car. There was several gas leaks in her house before the actual fire that claimed their lives. The man didn't give up. No, but we'll get to a little bit more of how he tried to make it seem as though he was being targeted as well. Yeah. Marian, you were Esther's sister. Jessica was a part of your life. Can you please tell us about them?
Well, Jessica came into our lives. Esther was at her birth. She came home to their house with Jeanette, with her mum for a while, and then Jeanette went home, and Jessica became my niece and just part of the family, and very much absorbed into the family. A loving little bundle. Yeah. And Esther we all adored her. And especially, you might know, things were going a bit wrong for us, in putting an understatement. My eldest son was dying of cancer at the time. And Jessica was like a little bright ray of light through it all. She'd turn up and everybody would just start giggling at her antics. She was just a dote. Esther was my younger sister by 2 years. Yeah. And she's my earliest memory in life. I brought her to school Mum was walking behind, but I brought her holding her hand to school on her first day. And through anything in our lives, we were together. When she came to UCD, she moved in with me. We finished each other's sentences. We were that close. Yeah. And we knew if we were in a room of people, we didn't really actually have to communicate that much with people to know what each of us thought. Oh, yeah.
You were that close.
We were that close, yeah.
And can I ask you then, when she met Frank, what was your impressions of him?
Such a change from the usual artistic, bit crazy types of partners that she had over the years. I mean, she was 4 years older than Frank. It was nearly a tradition at that stage. My mum was 4 years older than my father. But, and it would be one of the teases. Frank moved in on us all. He really took over in relation to, he was there at every turn. He fixed things in my house when you don't have handy people around. For someone to put a shelf up, it was wonderful. Yeah. But we were all courted, if you like. Yeah. We were all suddenly knew Frank McCann, and he was there at every turn. He did anything that happened. He was there to bring people driving.
So did you all like him? You all, he was then part of the family?
We're that kind of family. We're a bit inclusive.
Right.
Esther would always have brought home strays, whether they were people or dogs or cats or whatever. Yeah. But Frank was, he became part of the family, but I don't really know to say that we all warmed to him, but he was Esther's partner and she loved him.
So I know that Esther was an incredibly giving person. She did lots of fundraisers. She was a real part of the community. And when they moved into the house in Walkinstown, after they got married, things changed. You used to always just stroll into Esther's house and all of a sudden the door was locked. Little things like that started happening.
It was in Butterfield Avenue in Farnham, so she was only about 10 minutes away from me. Yeah. I had a key to the house. I always had a key to the house, and she always had a key to our house. So I would still go in and out. He didn't like it, but I didn't stop.
Right.
For a while, there was a bit of a gap. just an awkwardness. And they're newly married, leave them alone, stop wandering, you know, that type of thing. But when Jessica came along, that was the end of it. I mean, I was smitten.
And then we heard of these attempts, these further attempts that you were saying, Nicola. And you were saying you were, because you had your own, a lot going on with your son at the time. When he managed to do the gas leaks, the car, you were always away.
I was always away.
And he sort of timed this, that you would not be around the house.
The major gas leak on the 28th of July, which was a huge gas leak, it was, you know, what the gas company said was that the house next door would have gone up. It wouldn't have just been Esther, so Doyle's next door would have gone up as well. I was in the Mater with James. He was having a lobectomy. So I was away. I was staying overnight with him, and I was out of the way. But he was able to plan things to that extreme.
So he knew you couldn't come up to the door, open the door.
I wasn't going to be there. You know, if I went down, if I wasn't sleeping, I could go down to Esther.
Yeah.
You know.
What were some of the other things? Because the guards were being called, Nicola, during all of this, kind of made aware of these sinister things that were happening?
So Frank had started to lay out, I suppose, a theory for when eventually he got his way. And he said that he was getting phone calls. He was getting threats to his life down in the pub where he owned in Wicklow. And he said that there was like threats coming in to burn his pub, to burn him, etc. These were also going to a pub across the road, so it didn't look like it was just Frank. It was those two pubs in particular. And I suppose he was going up to the police, whether it was in Rathfarnham or he was going to the police in Blessington, making sure all of these were credited, were written down, were talked about. He even brought Jessica to the police station one of the days, a couple of days before she died. He took her out of the family were having an occasion together. He brought baby Jessica down to look like the doting dad in front of the Gardaí, and making sure that they knew that his life was being threatened, and all these things that were happening with the gas leaks and everything could be, you know, he insinuated, I suppose, what could have been linked there.
I mean, like Esther did say at one stage, he's trying to kill me, but nobody really, like, just thought it was a joke or she was doing it in jest.
That was at Derek, at Derek's wedding, Frank's brother's wedding. And it was in that setting, and all of those things had happened. Now, we were all very distracted.
Like the gas leak had happened, or things like that.
Everything
so people thought, oh, God, he must be trying to kill me. Or was that what?
Yeah. And it was in that circumstance of a joking environment. Unfortunately, we didn't take it seriously. But we were all a bit trying to be careful and yet getting distracted with what was going on.
They died in an incredibly violent, awful way in a house fire eventually. Marian, I'm so sorry about this, but in the aftermath of that, how were you?
Well, I was in Tramore with the kids. James was going to a Debs, or escorting a girl to a Debs that night. So I heard when I was in Tramore with my in-laws, Billy, my husband, rang me about 5 o'clock in the morning. And certainly for myself, there was a huge shock in that I lost a few hours. And then when my relations started coming in, the cousins started turning up, and I had to tell the kids. So I had told little Esther first. My daughter's called after Big Esther, and Big Esther was her godmother. So I told her first, sitting on my knee, and then we went and told the boys later on when they woke up. And then my cousin, who was a detective, drove my car with us in it back to Dublin, and kind of the nightmare really started from there. But before Patsy left Dublin, I asked him to speak to the guards for me, to say, well, to voice my suspicions. And but I knew I had to be careful. I really did.
Did you feel it might have been him?
Very much, and very quickly.
Why did you think you had to be careful?
So?
He was a very clever man. He wasn't going to be caught. And I think because every time he tried to kill Esther, he included Jessica.
Yeah.
The fact that someone would kill a baby, you know. Esther died on the landing trying to get to Jessica, probably terrified. Yeah. So it was important that I had to keep my family safe.
Yeah. Yes, of course.
But we also had to keep an image up, if you like.
Nicola, it was thought that it was a tragic accident. How did it all unravel?
The Gardaí, I suppose, were very clues at first to how this fire had started, because Bord Gáis had been out, had fixed everything in the house. And they were doing their own investigation because they couldn't understand how the gas leaks were happening. So the Gardaí actually went and recreated the fire to see where it came from, and it started to become quite apparent that it had been set. But then also Frank's behaviour. He was not acting like a normal person would. And I know grief is broad and it can manifest in many different ways, but on the night of Esther's and Jessica's funeral, he threw a birthday party for his mother in a pub. Celebration of someone's life hours after he'd been up giving a eulogy, and his mother didn't want that, the family didn't want that, but yet Frank was insistent on going ahead, and he made jokes about having excess charcoal in his house.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
God.
To sell it.
To sell it.
To sell it. He was like saying, I can sell it. I mean, look, he did get 2 life sentences. He's been 30 years behind bars. He's on day release now, and it's coming up for another parole, so he may be free. So, Marian, how do you and your family feel that this man who took those lives will walk free?
This is his 7th parole hearing, and we have presented, prior to the statutory board, it was just letters and submissions in. Now we meet people, which, while it's traumatising and difficult, at least we have faces to talk to. But the notion that he would be free to go and be wherever he wants to be, we just can't contemplate it. Really can't. It's nerve-wracking enough knowing he's out on temporary release, but if he was out, totally free man, free to do whatever and wherever he wants. And it's not just us. Frank's head, the way it works, the way I think it works, is if he has somebody in view that has crossed him, or if someone inadvertently crossed him, you really don't know what he's going to do. I know his brother Bernard is very wary and very frightened that if he gets out, he could be the next of his victims. And if Frank's made his mind up, he'll have made his mind up.
We're so unbelievably sorry for your loss, for everything you and your family have had to go through. And now you're kind of unpacking it all again, Nicola, with this podcast that really does go in depth with the family, which is so lovely to see that you're involved in this, and that Esther and Jessica, look at them there, that they're being remembered. It's called Nobody Heard Them Cry. It's a podcast from the Irish Sun. You can get it wherever you get your podcast. Nicola Bardon, who put all this together, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And Marian Leonard, Esther's sister and the aunt of Jessica, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Back with you in Ireland, Dave, in just a minute.